Hi, and welcome to this series where I'm going to be going through the ITIL4 practices individually, and I'll be giving you the main headline points you should be aware of in order to get a good level of knowledge around the practice in question. I'll also be discussing some of my real world experience and application of these practices in the various organisations I've worked in. Please subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you get the updates. Okay, so let's get to it. Today I'm going to be covering off incident management, which is from the service management practice. And there's 17 of those practices in there. I've created videos for each one of those, and check those out. A reminder, a practice is a set of organisational resources designed for performing work or accomplishing an objective. So let's kick off with a headline point around incident management, and this is really more around my experience. I've had 25 years, probably a bit longer than that, of incident management and ITIL overall. Incident management is so important when it comes to things like user satisfaction, your CSAT scores, customer experience, their journey as they have issues with IT, or they engage with IT, or need services or products, whatever it may be. It's the first point of contact, it's the front of house. So whether that's email, whether it's a self-service portal, whether it's the phone, whether it's a walk-in, just think that through as to that is your first point of contact with your customer, and first impressions do count. So really just think that through. A really good example of where you might want to think that through in terms of metrics. So what about time to acknowledge? So if somebody raises a ticket on the service desk, or somebody phones up, or whatever it may be, what are your metrics there? Are you saying, yes, we'll always answer the phone within 30 seconds, or we'll always give you a ticket reference number within X amount of time on the self-service portal? But just kind of put that to one side for a moment, and we'll come back to that. But really think about, this is your front of house, this is your first contact with your customer. So the ITIL purpose of incident management talks about minimizing the negative impact of incidents by restoring normal service operation as quickly as possible. And the definition of an incident is an unplanned interruption to a service or reduction in the quality of a service. So either it's been interrupted and it's not working, a server is down, for example, or it's a reduction in the quality. Maybe the server's up, but the performance is really bad, or there's issues with it. Note the definition there in terms of ITIL4 definition of an incident gives a great opportunity for that to now move into the enterprise service management area, in that it talks about it's a reduction or a reduction in quality or an interruption to a service. It doesn't specifically say an IT service, it just says a service. So that's a great kind of segue into enterprise service management. The other point around incident management, I would say, is ITIL4 talks less prescriptive about the process. It shifts the emphasis more onto well, here's the 34 practices. Your organisation knows your organisation best. Define, tweak, tailor, custom make these processes with what's going to work in your organisation. So here's the best practice, here's a good way to do it, but kind of a nod to look at your own organisation, have a bit more freedom there in terms of tailor making what's going to work there. Another technique that's new in the ITIL4 incident management practice is swarming. It has been around for a while, certainly I've come across it from an agile perspective, but the term, it's new to ITIL4 in terms of incident management and the practice within the service management practice. It It's a technique for solving various complex tasks. In swarming, multiple people with different areas of expertise work together on a task until it becomes clear which competencies are the most relevant and the most needed. So the analogy is bees. Just think about a swarm of bees. If there's an issue of some kind, that swarm will focus in all of the bees. There'll be hundreds and thousands of them, if you like, focusing in on an area, and then there's a real collaborative based approach there. So the model of swarming from an incident management perspective, if you think back to previous approaches and previous processes, it was more escalation based. Well, it was escalation based. You would have a level 1, you would have a level 2, you would have a level 3. Swarming is more around get everybody, all the various people or the groups, the subject matter experts together, look at that particular item, work out who needs to deal with that particular activity, and then the other bees, if you like, would then go elsewhere and deal with something else. So it's a real collaborative based approach and process rather than the previous approach, which was one of escalation. So it's not new. It's been around for a while. I've certainly come across it in my experience working in organisations in agile approaches. But it's good to know that there's this new technique is swarming, and rather than escalation based, it's collaborative, and you've got lots of people who jump onto something, work out who are the best people, the best teams. Maybe there's a vendor needs to be in that mix, and then those people are assigned to that task, and they deal with that because they've got the best competencies, the best skills, the most relevant experience. The best practice we spoke about a minute ago in terms of incident management. It's less prescriptive. It's still a good idea to have logging, categorization, prioritization, investigation, look at it, make sure you're communicating to the people that have got the problems, and then resolving it, or perhaps there's going to be some kind of interface there in terms of problem management or change management, and then reviewing and closing. There's definite guidelines there, but certainly the nod is more around to organisations are being advised to design something that is on the same track as the culture and the approach and the appetite within that particular organisation. So something that's very much in line with their requirements. I'm just going to talk about major incident process for a few moments here, and I've worked in lots of different organisations, and I've designed lots of different types of major incident management processes, and it's important to recognise when you're looking through your best practice approach in terms of what are the steps for incident management. There's going to come a point where you're going to have to prioritise it. You're going to have to look at the urgency. You're going to look at the impact, and some of those are going to be day to day. Okay, yeah, that's a P2, that's P3, it's P4, P5, whatever. But there are going to be cases where something's going to be categorised as top priority. It's going to be a priority 1, or it's going to be service stopping. It's going to be a P0. So it's important to just think through that as to how you interface the major incident component into your incident management process. I've designed a number of P1 process flows where a ticket would come in, and maybe it would more often than not be a phone call, or it would be an event, an automated event activity of some kind that would come in, and then that would be assessed. It would be looked at in terms of impact and urgency. It would come out as, yes, this is a P1. And then maybe there would be some kind of contacting a duty major incident manager. What I quite like to see in major incident process activity flows are engaging with the business as well as technical. So there's the technical triage, if you like, and standing up a duty manager for major incident, but there's also a business element to that. It's not just the tech teams. And then assessing that, and then from a business perspective, absolutely getting clarification. Yes, this is service stopping. We, from a business perspective, we can't trade, or there is some kind of impact there. And then typically you would go through the standard process of major incident. You'd create a bridge, you would have a MIM team created, you would assemble those, you would then think about your comms, you'd be creating perhaps a first comms draft with a commitment to issue that out hourly. You would get your various subject matter experts and leads and perhaps vendors would agree the activity, the actions, to look for corrective action, and then making that position. Has it been solved? Yes, no. If it's not no, back to the bridge, continue with corrective actions. But it's also worth noting about how these processes and practices link into other activities. So while you're on a bridge, for example, and the answer comes out, yeah, we need to reboot the server, or we need to do some kind of activity that you would say is an emergency change, you're going to be linking into the change management process there. And then another example of where those interfaces would come in would be once you've got your final resolution and the service desk has sent out their final comms to say service has now been resumed. I would expect there would be an RCA, there would be a major incident report, there'd be a problem record. So you would have that link into problem management. So just think about, when we talk about incident management, think there's a major incident element to that, which hopefully will be assessed during your priority stage, and also then just making sure you're aware there are a few processes that and practices that definitely kind of link into this incident management process. We talked about change, we talked about problem there. There are other activities as well. Okay, so let's just talk value chain for a moment. The incident management practice, it's involved, like with a lot of the practices we've talked about in terms of general management practice, service management practice, and technical management practices. It's involved in all of those activities, that PIDOD way of remembering, planning, improving, engaging, design and transition, obtain and build, deliver and support, to get to that end result, that product, that service which will deliver value. From an incident management practice, main emphasis is going to be around engaging and deliver and support. So that I'll definitely highlight those as areas where there's a lot of activity going on in that area. There's activity in other areas, but just kind of be aware that engage, deliver and support are some of those big items. Okay, so final thoughts. Just be mindful when it comes to incident management and the practice that there are other interfaces. So as an example, items that immediately come to the top of my mind are event and monitoring practice, problem practice, and change practice. So if you've got an incident, perhaps the event and monitoring element was the start of that incident. Maybe an alert of some kind was generated, and that automatically created an incident in your service management tool. Problem management and change management, we talked about from a problem management perspective. Once that incident has been resolved, if it's a major incident, it's a P1 or a 0, you would go through the major incident report, you would have a root cause analysis. There would be an element of, okay, well, what happened? What can we do? So there's a very strong problem management interface there. And then change as well. Perhaps on the bridge during that activity, there was a requirement to reboot a server or to restart a server or whatever it may be. So there's a link into the change element. It's also worth pointing out when we talk about interfaces, the problem and change both can be proactive as well. So they can be reactive. There's a problem. What do we need to do to fix it now? Let's fix it. And likewise for a change, it could be an emergency change, right? Reboot the server, fix it now. Both of those practices can also be proactive. problem management proactivity, I particularly like to see information that says, okay, well, we know we're forecasting that in the next 12 months X, Y, and Z is potentially going to happen and will become an issue, it will become an incident. This is what we can do to head that off before it happens. And perhaps that's been a previous issue before and there's a problem record there, so you can be proactive with your problem management. And likewise for change as well. Perhaps during your P1 something came out, it was fixed, but the real answer, the route of resolving this is to upgrade something or change something or swap it out or whatever it may be, a change of some kind. So again, maybe that's some kind of proactive change management. Other interfaces that typically you need to be just pondering and thinking through around the incident management practice. We've mentioned event monitoring, we've mentioned problem, we've mentioned change, we've got the service desk as a function, we've got the service request management, we've got service continuity management, deployment management, of course the infrastructure and platform management in the technical management practices, project management, release management, software dev and management, as well as CI, continual improvement, just to kind of reel off a list of other practices that are going to be interfacing into that incident management. The other point to think through really is that it's less prescriptive now. ITIL4 is less prescriptive. There's an emphasis. Here's the guidance. Here's some best practice approaches, and organisations are then advised design a process for managing your incidents that's going to work in your organisation in line with your specific requirements, your specific culture, your specific appetite, whatever it may be. But yeah, just kind of a slight aside there. And then metrics, do be aware of, you need to measure incident management. Typically, I mentioned acknowledgement. So what's the mean time to acknowledgement? Are you always going to say that the person phoning up will have a unique reference number within a certain amount of time, or an acknowledgement in terms of, yep, we've got it, we haven't fixed it, but we are we're acknowledging your call, and maybe that's 30 seconds after an IVR or whatever it may be. But make sure you do have some good metrics. First time fix I'm particularly keen on when it comes to incidents. So the perception there is always good. If you phone up a service desk because something's not working, you've got an incident and it's stopping you from working. If the person on the end of the phone, or if the tool, maybe it's self-service, whatever it is, if that can solve the problem there and then, that's brilliant. That's great customer service. That's a first time fix. You phoned up, it doesn't work. The person says, press Alt and 4 and that fixes it, or whatever it is. That's a real good metric, and well worth investing the time and effort as to what are the items that we're saying a first time fix, and then what's the metric. How much are you looking to achieve as a first time fix? Is it 85% perhaps of the predefined list? Whatever that metric is, just keep an eye on that, encourage that. That's a real world tip to improve perception. And then clearly you're going to have recovery metrics. So if you've got a P1, what have you defined in terms of setting an expectation to a customer? What does P1 mean? We know it's important, or certainly in some organisations I've seen P0, but in terms of your priority, we know we're going to prioritise things in terms of the urgency, the impact, what's the damage. But what does it mean to a customer when they're trying to work out, well, how long is this going to take? How long should it take? Is it going to take a day, or is it going to take 2 hours? So set that expectation. Mean time to recovery. So a P1, are you saying a priority one is always going to be fixed within 4 hours? 100% of the time it's going to be fixed in 4 hours? Or are you going to say, well, 90% of the time it's going to be fixed in 4 hours? A P2, is that 6, is it 8 hours? Each agreement, each timing needs to be thought through, but also is that 100% of those P1, 2, 3, 4s, 5s, are they going to be resolved 100% of the time within that period of time? Or more realistically, are you going to say, well, 95% of them or 90% of them are going to be fixed within that time? The final parting point I'll leave you with is the perception point. This practice, the incident management practice, is so key to improving the customer perception of your service. Think about the people answering the phones. Think about the first time they contact the service desk through a portal. What's the experience like? What's the journey like? That will have a massive impact on the perception of the function overall. This is one of the key areas that you not only want to be familiar as to, okay, well, what's the definition, what's the purpose of this, how do we manage things like P1s and so on, absolutely, but the customer service point, this is a real touch point and needs extra care and attention and thought. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. I will continue to post videos around the ITIL4 practices. Please do subscribe, like, and hit the bell to get the updates. Thank you.